Good morning, students. I welcome to you, each one of you, to this new class. Hope all of you are fine and doing well, and you completed the assignments that was given in the previous chapter. To help you recall, the previous chapter that we discussed was we made a comparative study between the early Vedic period and the later Vedic period. Hope you all are able to recall it now. Today we are going to study about the situation or the condition of India in the 6th century BC, where two new religious reforms took place, that is Jainism and Buddhism. 600 BC in India has a very important position, and it has created a landmark in the history of India, because it was during this 6th century a lot of thinkers came into existence, not only in India but also in Persia, China. And in Persia it was Zoroaster, and in China it was Confucius. And there were thinkers who wanted to bring certain reforms or changes in the society prevailing in those days. So likewise, in India, we come across Jainism and Buddhism. These two were the religious reforms that started all because of the Vedic religion, which had become very, very difficult for the common man to follow. And in this chapter, we will be studying about the causes that led to the rise of Jainism and Buddhism in the 6th century BC. And we will also be studying about the dogmas or the teachings of Jainism and Buddhism, which was started by Vardhamana Mahavira, that is Jainism, and Gautama Buddha, Buddhism. As you already know, before we begin with the chapter, we need to know the sources from where we get all this information. As told you before, we have various type of sources to know about the history of India. And they are, yes, archaeological sources, literary sources. And besides that, we have certain monuments and all, we have certain writings which are there, we found available in different parts of the country, in certain monuments and all. Now, to go ahead with the chapter, first of all, let us try to know about the sources from where we can reconstruct or know about the emergence of Jainism and Buddhism, which were religious reforms that started in India by Vardhamana Mahavira and Gautama Buddha in 600 BC or 6th century BC. So, first of all, let us try to know, understand the literary sources. Amongst the literary sources, we have got literary works such as the Jataka tales, the three Pitakas, and the 12 Angas. They all give us valuable information with regard to Jainism and Buddhism. Now, the Jataka, among the literary sources, the first one is the Jataka tales. Now, these Jataka tales, they were written in the local language of the people those days, that was Pali. Now, what does the Jataka tale contains? The Jataka tale contains or tells us about the previous life of Buddha. It tells us about the previous birth or previous lives of Buddha. Added to it, it also throws light on the social, political, economic condition of the people and the society from 5th century to 6th century BC. Once again, the Jataka tales, which comes under the literary sources, which was written in Pali, tell us about the previous birth of Buddha. Beside that, it also tells us about the social, political, economic condition of the society and the people from 5th century to 6th century BC. This is one of the first literary sources to know about Jainism and Buddhism. The second one, we have the three Pitakas, or they are also known as the three baskets. Among the three Pitakas, we have the first one, Sutta Pitaka. The three Pitakas, which are also known as the three baskets, and amongst them, the first one is Sutta Pitaka. Now, the Sutta Pitaka contains the teachings of Buddha as well as the sayings of Buddha. When Buddha came as a reformer and started teaching about his new thought, whatever sayings were said by him, whatever teachings were given by Lord Buddha, it is there in the Sutta Pitaka. So Sutta Pitaka contains the teachings and sayings of Gautama Buddha. The second one is Abhidhamma Pitaka. Abhidhamma Pitaka. Now, Abhidhamma Pitaka gives us the philosophical interpretation of whatever is there in the Sutta Pitaka. What does Sutta Pitaka contain? Teachings and sayings of Buddha. So, Abhidhamma Pitaka gives us the philosophical interpretation of whatever was taught by Gautama Buddha and whatever was said by Gautama Buddha. So it contains philosophical interpretation of Sutta Pitaka. Now the third literary source, or the third Pitaka amongst the three Pitakas, the last one is Vinaya Pitaka. Now, in the previous chapter, when we studied about the early Vedic period and the later Vedic period, we studied about education system. What kind of education system did they follow? They followed Gurukul system of education, as well as their world or life was divided into different stages. That is the later Vedic period. Could you tell them? Yes. Brahmacharya, Grihastha, Sannyasa and Vanaprastha. Now, as Jainism and Buddhism emerged, there were many followers, and at the same time, there were people who followed Buddha and Mahavira, and after their death, their teachings were forwarded or carried on by people who were called as the monks and the nuns. Now, Vinaya Pitaka contains the rules and the regulations which were to be followed by these monks and the nuns, and they were as a guidance or sort of a guidebook for the monks and the nuns who advocated or carried on or took over the teachings of Lord Mahavira and Gautama Buddha. Now let's see the third literary sources. Third one is the Angas. There are 12 Angas. The Jain Council, when they came together, they compiled the teachings of Lord Mahavira and his successors or other Tirthankaras into a book called as the 12 Angas. So, especially if you are asked to know about the sources with regard to the teachings of Jainism, it is the 12 Angas. So these are the literary sources to know about Jainism and Buddhism. The first one is Jataka tales. What does Jataka tale contain? It contains the sayings and teachings of Lord Buddha. Then, besides that, it also gives us tells us about the political, economic and social condition of the people during the 6th to 5th to 6th century BC. Then we have the other literary source to know about know about Buddhism, especially, they are the three Pitakas, which is also known as the three baskets. So among the three Pitakas, the first one is Sutta Pitaka, which contains the teachings and sayings of Lord Buddha. Then we have Abhidhamma Pitaka, that gives us the philosophical interpretation of whatever is there in the Sutta Pitaka. Then we have the Vinaya Pitaka, which contains rules and regulations, or it acts as a guidance or a guidebook for the monks and the nuns who were preaching whatever or teaching whatever Lord Mahavira or Lord Buddha taught in those days. So to know especially about Jainism, we have the Angas. These teachings of the Jain Gurus or the Tirthakaras, the teachers, were compiled by a Jain council into Angas. There are how many Angas are there? There are 12 Angas. Now we move forward to the archaeological sources. Amongst the archaeological sources, we have the first one, Sanchi Stupa. Then second one, we have the Sarnath pillar. Third one, we have a Jain temple at Shravana. Now, these are the archaeological sources or the monuments from where we come to know about Jainism and Buddhism. So, what are they? Sanchi Stupa, the Sarnath pillar, and a Jain temple at Shravana. Now, we will be studying in detail about Sanchi Stupa and the Sarnath pillar later on as we go ahead with the chapter. Now, the next one that we need to know, the important topic that is to be covered according to syllabus is the sources the causes that led to the rise of Jainism and Buddhism in the 6th century BC. So far we just saw the sources from where we can reconstruct about Jainism and Buddhism. Now we need to know the causes that led to the rise of Jainism and Buddhism in the 6th century BC. Now, among the causes, the first one is ritualistic Vedic religion. In the previous chapter, you have already learned the Vedic religion, which began mostly in the early Vedic period, was very simple. People at that time followed or worshipped the elements of nature. Their ways of worshipping offerings were very simple. And as time passed, and during the later Vedic period, more rituals were added into the simple common Vedic religion. And as time passed, from 5th to 6th century BC, the Vedic religion had become very ritualistic. Common people had a difficult time following this Vedic religion, as many rituals had to be followed. And then, in the previous chapter, when we studied about the early Vedic period and the later Vedic period, at that time we did discuss about the literary sources, especially the Vedas. Yes, the Vedas. And in the Vedas we studied about the different Vedas from which gave us or which told us about the various rituals and so on. So what I am trying to tell is the reason or the first cause responsible for the rise of Jainism and Buddhism was, first one, the ritualistic Vedic religion. The Vedic religion, which had originated and started in the very beginning, was very simple. And as time went on, during the later Vedic period, many rituals were introduced in this religion. And it was very, very difficult for the common people to follow, understand and practice them. Therefore, what happens? A new religion which began, a religious reform which was started by Mahavira and Buddhism was against this ritualistic Vedic religion. Because of that, Jainism and Buddhism became popular. Now next one we will see is the introduction of animal sacrifice. As told you before, in the early Vedic period, religion was very, very simple. And people worshipped the elements of nature. And they pleased gods. And they offered sacrifices. Yes, they did offer sacrifices to the gods and goddesses. But the sacrifices that they offered were all natural, like flowers, fruits, and so on. But as time passed, as the movement started going again, as it advanced, the religion had become very ritualistic, and now animals were used as sacrifice to please gods and goddesses. And it was very difficult for the common people, because at that time people were agrarian, the society was agrarian, and now people had started domestication of animals, and agriculture had become very, very important, and it was one of the most important occupations. So now, when animals were used as sacrifice to please the gods and goddesses, it was very difficult for the common people. So they were against this animal sacrifice. Now, Jainism and Buddhism, once it became popular because they preached or they taught about non-violence. And they were against animal sacrifices. So because of which a new reform started, a new religion began, that is Jainism and Buddhism. Reason? Because of the animal sacrifice that was introduced or that became popular in the 5th to 6th century BC. Now we will study about the third cause which was responsible for the emergence of Jainism and Buddhism. That is dominance of the priestly class. In the previous chapter, that is the Vedic period, we studied about the 4 Varnas that came into existence. In the early Vedic period, the Varna system was very, very flexible. Which were the 4 Varnas? Yes, the Brahmanas, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas and the Sudras, which was based on the occupation of the people. In the later Vedic period, this Varna system had become very, very complex and very rigid. Now, a group of people, the priestly class or the Brahmanas, now they occupied the topmost position in the society. A common life of a person revolved around the religion. From his birth till his death, everything revolved around the religion and was completely dominated by the priestly class of the Brahmins. So common people have to follow whatever this Brahmins said. And they introduced so many new rituals, rites and so on, which was very, very difficult for the common people to follow. And they wanted to change. They were looking for a change because they were not able to continue or follow whatever this priestly class was saying, and they were dominating the lower sections of the society, mostly the Vaishyas and the Sudras. And when Jainism and Buddhism came into existence, they were against the supremacy of the Brahmins because they started teaching equality of the people. They did not believe in caste discrimination. And that itself is going to be the 4th cause which was responsible for the rise of Jainism and Buddhism in the 6th century BC. The fourth cause that was responsible for the rise of Jainism and Buddhism was the rigid caste system. The caste system, as we know already, had become very, very rigid during the later Vedic period. And the caste system was divided or categorized, it was into watertight compartments. The lower caste of people, especially the Vaishyas and the Shudras, were dominated by the upper class, that is the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas. They were ill-treated. The concept of untouchability began from the very time. So, the common people, especially the Vaishyas and the Shudras, they were against the practice of this caste system for the ill-treatment that was given to them. So, they were looking for a change which was provided by Jainism and Buddhism. Now, the intellectual people, so to say Mahavira, Buddha and all, at the time, they preached about the equality of the people and they were against the caste system that was being practiced during the 5th to 6th century BC, because of which Jainism and Buddhism became very, very popular. Now we go to the 5th cause that was responsible for the rise of Jainism and Buddhism, and that is the difficult Vedic language. So could you tell me what is the Vedic language, which is the common popular language during the Vedic period? Yes, it was Sanskrit. Now, the Sanskrit as a language was very, very difficult, which were known only by the upper sections of the society, mostly the Brahmins and the Kshatriyas. And among the Kshatriyas also, very few of chosen ones, the common people, richer sections of the society, could read or understand Sanskrit. So whatever rites, rituals were performed by this Brahmins or the priest, and when the sacrifices were made, many mantras were chanted, all these were in Sanskrit, which a common man could not understand. So, because of the difficult Vedic language, Sanskrit, Jainism and Buddhism became popular. Why? Because Mahavira and Gautama Buddha taught the people in their local language, that is Pali and Prakrit and Pali. These were the local language, the common language of the people. Buddha and Mahavira used the common language of the people, that is Prakrit and Pali, to teach about their religion. Whereas the Vedic religion, the Vedic texts were all written in Sanskrit, which a common man could not understand. Because of which the new religion that emerged in the 5th to 6th century BC became very, very popular. So till now, what are the things that you have learned? We are doing the causes for the rise of Jainism and Buddhism in the 6th century BC. The first one was the ritualistic Vedic religion. The Vedic religion, which is very common and very simple, became very ritualistic because lots of rituals were introduced mostly by this priestly class who dominated the society or a common man. Second one, animal sacrifices were being introduced or began to please gods and goddesses. People, the common people at that time, mostly the most important occupation at the time was agriculture, and for agriculture they needed animals to plow the fields for manure and so on. Now, when animals were used in large number to please gods and goddesses while performing sacrifices and yasanas, so the common people had difficulty, so they were against it. The third one, dominance of the priestly class. This priestly class, as told, they introduced so many new rituals, rites and all, many ways ways of pleasing gods and goddesses. A life of a common man from his birth to his death revolved around religion, and it was completely dominated by the people. Added to it, the caste system which had introduced had become very, very rigid, and these two can be seen as similar one, became responsible for the rise of Jainism and Buddhism, because Gautama Buddha and Lord Mahavira, they were against animal sacrifices. They preached about non-violence and equality of the people. The last one that we saw was difficult Vedic language. Vedic language at the time was Sanskrit, and most of the rites, rituals, mantras, everything was said and written in Sanskrit, which was not understood by the common man. Whereas when Buddha and Mahavira, they taught in their common language of the people, Prakrit and Pali. We studied about the causes that were responsible for the rise of Jainism and Buddhism. The teachings or the dogmas of Jainism and Buddhism will be taught in the next chapter. So now let us briefly recapitulate whatever we have learned so far. We began with the sources to know about Jainism and Buddhism. Among them we saw the literary sources. Yes, what are they? The Jatakatals, the 3 Pitakas, and the 12 Angas. And what they contain, I have already explained. Amongst the archaeological sources, we have the Sarnath pillar, the Sanchi Stupa, and the Jain temple at Shravana. Then we move ahead with the causes that were responsible for the rise of Jainism and Buddhism in the 6th century BC. In the next class, we will study about the dogmas or the teachings of Lord Mahavira and Gautama Buddha, which is there in your syllabus. So as an assignment, please do kindly go through the chapter and the lessons covered so far. Thank you.